It's going to be a landslide, folks. Welcome to the Newswatch. I'm Greg D, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. Today on the Newswatch, we're going to be talking about why the 2020 election that's coming up here in November is going to be a Trump landslide. And the way that we're going to illustrate that is by talking a little bit about last week's vice presidential debate. I didn't have a chance to do a full analysis, so I thought this was a good way to kind of talk about what's going on this week a little bit, but also just kind of give an overview of what I saw coming out of that vice presidential debate. Not a full analysis, just kind of some general comments so we can start looking at what's going on right now and heading into the next 4 weeks. Welcome to the Newswatch. This is your common sense perspective on all the nonsense that we're getting weekly in the mainstream news cycle. The show is for conservatives that are looking for something that has a little more depth, something that reaches beyond the sensationalized headlines they're seeing in the rest of their week. If you're liking this show, if you're enjoying the content, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Also, share this show out to your friends on whatever platform you are watching it on. It would be greatly appreciated. And not to mention, you are helping us spread Christian conservative values to help make America a greater place. Okay, so today we're going to start by talking a little bit in general about how this election is shaping up to be a Trump landslide. I don't know if I can emphasize that word enough. Maybe I need a few more exclamation marks. So you've heard me say this for the last few weeks if you watch the show. The polls do not give an accurate picture of what is really going on in this 2020 presidential race. And a lot of the problems are similar to what we saw in 2016. It's almost like Groundhog Day all over again. They're not learning their lessons. I'm referring to the mainstream media, of course, and their pundits. They're looking at all the wrong evidence and coming to all the wrong conclusions. And that's why I thought it would be really kind of apropos. It would be a good idea to talk about how the vice presidential debate that happened last week can illustrate this point exactly. We're going to take our eyes off from the polls today. We're going to be putting our focus on something a little more common sense. The real evidence for what is going on leading up to the November election is the groundswell support, the populist support that we are seeing continue to surge behind the conservative candidate, behind the Republican Party, behind Donald Trump. And subsequently, the lack of energy that Joe Biden's campaign has. Joe has almost zero enthusiasm for his campaign. It is really silly to watch. You know, he'll have 40 people at one of his events. On the same day in Florida, Mike Pence will draw 4,000. Need I remind you, Mike Pence is the vice presidential. He's not even the main guy, okay? So on the same day that the opposing party is putting up their presidential, the guy that's running for president on their side, they can only draw 40 people. On the same day that the vice president's side for the conservatives is drawing 4,000. This is an indicator of just how much enthusiasm, just how much excitement, just how much true, heartfelt American support there is for the conservative platform, for the policies that the conservatives are promoting. And, I heard somebody say recently that it's spiritual. And I thought about that and I'm like, I think there really is something to be said, even if you don't agree with a specific world religion on this. Say, oh, I'm a Christian, therefore I agree with this on a spiritual level that way. I think that there's something that the Conservative Party is tapping into, which is kind of like the spirit of patriotism. Of course, I would attribute that myself to Christian values because I'm a Christian, but you don't even have to go that far. You could just say, in general, there is something happening on the right that does have more of a spiritual vibe to it than what is happening on the left. I'm sure you've seen some of the videos that have been circulating around the internet where you'll see like a clip of Joe Biden's rally or event, I don't know, interview, sort of, with no questions. And then you'll see the videos of Donald Trump's events, or maybe you'll see the entire event, and you'll just see that stark contrast. What I did here was I just assembled just a quick little slideshow here, just a quick little way of drawing the distinction, drawing the contrast between the support we're seeing for the Democrats and the support we're seeing for the Republican Party. And I'm just going to share just the still images with you, because I believe what we are seeing here right now is an enthusiasm gap, which is morphing into an enthusiasm Grand Canyon. And if this continues, ramping up to Election Day, which I predict it will, there'll be almost no one even going out and voting for the Democratic candidate, Joe Biden. They just won't show up. Let's say they go, well, I don't like Donald Trump, I'm not going to vote for him, right? But I think they'll then say, but am I going to vote for Joe Biden? I don't know if I even have enough enthusiasm to go out to the polls for that guy. I think we're going to see a lot of people just not even show up to vote. They can't bring themselves to vote for Donald Trump, but I think they may just stay home. At any rate, that's just a little bit of speculation. I do think that the enthusiasm gap that we're seeing is really turning into something much wider than just a simple gap. Here you'll see an image from one of Donald Trump's events. I mean, come on. People sitting, of course, all in front of him. That makes sense. You're at a rally. But people so hungry to be there, they're willing to sit behind him and look at the back of his head. Oh my goodness. That is a huge amount of enthusiasm for a candidate. And in comparison, here's one of Joe Biden's events. By the way, this is one of Joe Biden's better events, all right? So what you're seeing here is like one of his big crowds. And you can see how they had to like crop in on it. So like you don't see that actually there's like almost nobody there. What, maybe there's like 100 people there total, 50 to 100, you know, and then contrast that to one of Donald Trump's events. You see what I'm saying here? He's got to hold his events at an airport, whereas Joe Biden can hold his events in a park. Here's another one of Joe Biden's events. It looks like Bernie Sanders is speaking at a Biden-Harris event. Really big draw there, huh? There's almost as many cameramen as there are people in the audience supporting him. So let's look at a few of the fans. Here's a few of the people that are showing up at these rallies, you know? Take a look at this group. You tell me. Where's their enthusiasm, right? You know, let's look at the support of, you know, the more mild-mannered candidate. His crowd, you know, not quite as into it, right? Not like smiling and cheering. You know, they're there. You know, one guy's got his laptop open on his lap. And then contrast that to this event right here. Yeah, you're just looking at the reality here. You're looking at something beyond what the mainstream media is trying to sell you. They want you to believe that the polls are swinging for Biden at a plus 14 over Trump. And this is the kind of sad sack sort of event you'll get with a Biden. as opposed to what you get with any one of Donald Trump's rallies. It's literally silly. I mean, for them to be selling us these polls like it's such a true and measured, even, accurate way of telling us who is in the lead leading up to the election, I just think that it's another lie. It's another shiny bouncing ball. The media is always trying to get us to follow the shiny bouncing ball. Here's something for you guys to obsess about. Here's something for you guys to focus on or pay attention to. Don't look over here. Don't look at the crowds that Donald Trump is drawing. Look at what we're telling you. The polls say plus 14 for Biden. So let's take a minute to talk about this enthusiasm gap and why the enthusiasm gap continues to widen. I'll use last week's vice presidential debate to illustrate some of the glaring differences between the Republican and the Democrat approach. I think will help to explain a little bit of this. Okay? So, looking at the 2020 Democrats, they are the party of non-playable characters. I think you guys have probably heard of this if you've been watching anything on the internet at any length of time. It was really popular, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, to use the term NPC to describe the general liberal, just kind of like the basic liberal, right? But I think it still works. I actually can't think of a better way of describing the left's approach to virtually everything, accepting a narrative and then spewing out the lines that they've been told to say by the mainstream media. Not 1 ounce of thinking for themselves. And the Republican Party is a party of autonomous thinking, logic, reasoning for oneself, actually taking pride in thinking through issues for themselves and the policies. Democrats aren't even a party of policy, really. Just a party of emotion. The vice presidential debate perfectly highlighted the difference between the Republicans and Democrats' approach to politics in 2020, and subsequently why there is a growing enthusiasm gap. And as a result, why I believe Donald Trump will win this election in a complete landslide. So I'm going to look just for a moment at each one of the two vice presidential candidates and talk a little bit about their performance in last week's debate, so that this kind of helps illustrate the point that I'm making here. Big picture is this, the one sentence breakdown. Mike Pence mopped the floor with Kamala Harris. Mike was calm, cool, and measured. Kamala was a complete NPC political hack. Okay, so notes on Pence's performance specifically. Mike was well prepared, okay? He knew the issues. He spoke to them with intelligence and articulateness in a compelling way that highlighted the true difference between where Democrats and Republicans stand. I don't even want to say he highlighted the policy differences, although I think he did that. I think he just talked strongly about the policies that the Republicans stand for. And the Democratic candidate, Kamala, didn't even speak to policy hardly at all. It was all mainstream media junk that she picked up from either books that were written about Donald Trump, which were lies, or the mainstream media narratives, which are blown out of proportion or straight up lies. No policy, just Trump is a bad guy because, fill in the blank. So Pence delivered several major blows to both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And in some cases, he was directing the blow at Joe Biden through the proxy of Kamala Harris. So he's kind of taking both of them on simultaneously. There's been a lot of talk the last, week or so since that debate where they're trying to frame the situation, representing Pence as though he was mansplaining to Kamala. But it's a really hard thing to sell because he was so mild-mannered. I think what we were really seeing is just a guy that was failing to pull punches just because he was talking to a woman. He simply went at her on the issues the way that he would go after anybody, male or female. If anything, he treated her with absolute equity. It's another one of those things where the left is going to see what the left wants to see. And I think that's what we're seeing from our media since that time. They've got to look for something to focus on that's not the real issue, because he clearly won from a logic, reason-based standpoint. So instead of looking at things through a logic-based way of analyzing something, you saw it from the media. I mean, they're focusing more on a fly landing on his head than the substance of the debate itself. A fly on somebody's head, that's what they're focusing on. I mean, it got so ridiculous in some of the mainstream news coverage. There was one guy that was, and this was like a cable network. This was like a mainstream network where this guy was saying the fly landing on his head is like the mark of the beast, 666, Satanism. And it was just so dumb. So stupid. Big difference between the two parties is Republicans are guided by logic and reason and actually care genuinely about real issues, measured by true metrics, whether they be financial metrics for the economy or whether they be scientific metrics to solve big issue problems like the coronavirus. That's where the conservatives are in their sweet spot. Whereas the Democrats are guided by emotion and almost no reason or logic. Every response they give is heavy on emotional appeal. If you look at the vice presidential debate, Kamala was all about laying on the emotional appeal very thick. But no citing of facts, figures, or even bothering with looking at things through a truthful, factual lens, right? I mean, she didn't even bother like researching the story that she recited about Abraham Lincoln. Somebody wrote it for her. She delivered it in the most emotional way she possibly could. But it was an untrue story about Abraham Lincoln, at any rate. I guess in the Democrats' heads, if you're emotionally outraged enough about something, then you're excused from having to talk about actual policies. In fact, the Liberal Party is the party of fantastic fictional narratives. It's all about this kind of crazy psychodrama they're holding in their head. And if you ever challenge them on that psychodrama that they're holding in their head, they'll just stick their head in the sand like an ostrich. Everything Kamala said in the debate was literally every made-up story that has been pushed by the mainstream media in the last 3 years. Kind of like listening to like a greatest hits of lies that have been pushed by the mainstream media about Donald Trump for the last 3 years plus. Just ridiculous. So intellectually dishonest. All right, so here's my notes kind of summing up Kamala's performance. We talked a little bit about Pence. Shifting gears here to Kamala. Okay, so her tone, her delivery, her approach, condescending, smug, sanctimonious, preening jerk. Doesn't matter if she's a man or a woman. If you are condescending, smug, and you're a sanctimonious, preening jerk, you're still a sanctimonious, preening jerk, even if you're a woman. Claim to be representing facts, when in fact, she is straight up lying, editorializing, or selling a narrative that somebody else handed her. She was completely unlikable. I don't know if enough people talk about this, so I'm going to say it one more time. She is an unlikable person. This isn't about her being a man or a woman. This is about her being unlikable. Just the worst traits of a phony politician all rolled into one person. She competes equally on the playing field with men for being the most unlikable, biggest jerk in politics. So in that way, she has achieved equity. All of her points throughout the entire debate were just a summation of all the narratives, as I said before. Most of what she said was just a bunch of nonsense about how inadequate President Trump has been based on what the news says about him. All narratives, no facts. That's what we're getting from the Democrats now. This is contributing to why their enthusiasm is dropping. Social media has come in now and given people another way of receiving their news and receiving what's going on in the world, other than waiting for a cable channel or a newspaper or magazine to tell them what is going on in the world. People are opening their eyes. The general public is coming around on things. They can't even be swayed by the news telling them there's a poll that says that all these other people approve of these people this way. It's not even working anymore. People are just simply showing up out of their own enthusiasm for the Republican candidate, which is Donald Trump right now. Or maybe they're showing up for Donald Trump and he happens to be a Republican candidate. I guess you could debate that back and forth. So, Kamala Harris didn't have anything precise to say about policy. In fact, all she did was dodge questions about policy. But she knew very precisely what she does not like about Donald Trump's performance, and she knows very precisely the details of what he's doing wrong. Whatever Donald Trump did wasn't good enough. Why? Because Kamala said it wasn't good enough. Proof or specific examples? Nah, we don't need those. We'll just build a straw man out of what the news said for us to say about Donald Trump, and then we'll try to gaslight him with that. More talk about, this tired narrative that he's racist, da-da-da-da-da. You know the deal. You know the junk they're trying to sell. She and Joe, do they have a better plan? Don't know. Because we don't know what the plan would even be. Why? Because they don't think that they need to answer questions about what their plan is going to be, or specifically what they're going to do about this, that, or the other, right? Are they are they for fracking or are they against fracking? Are they for court packing or are they against court packing? I guess we'll just have to elect them to find out where they stand on the issues. Because we all hate Donald Trump so much. That's what's going to get them elected. Honestly, that at the end of the day is the one thing they're hanging their hat on. They're counting on everybody in the country hating Donald Trump so much they will vote for them without knowing anything about what they're going to do and what policies they actually stand for. Because we just keep getting mixed messages from both of them about what they're actually going to do and what they actually stand for. They're trying to thread the needle right now, on the left anyways, of capitulating to the far left crazies in their party and then trying to retain the moderates so they can still get that vote. It's very difficult because their party is going to go through a schism very soon. As soon as this election is over, I think we're going to see a huge split in what the Democrats want to do. They'll have an identity crisis, and then there'll be a competition for the next 4 years of what's going to win, the far left group of Democrats or the moderate left, kind of pushing back on that and saying, hey, look, Donald Trump won ultimately because he's not an extremist. He won because he came into the middle on so many things, and he basically is eating our lunch. He's taking a lot of our issues away from us. So the best thing we could possibly do is take some of those populist issues back from Donald Trump, and you got to be in the middle to do that. Anyways, maybe that's a video for another time. I'll dig in a little deeper later. So Getting back to Kamala Harris's performance, the reason why Kamala is the perfect vessel to deliver the lies and the narratives of the media and the establishment left is because she is a soulless, empty vessel that will recite whatever she is told to recite out of party loyalty. You see, Kamala Harris is the perfect NPC. The facts of the matter is that Kamala was chosen because of the way she looks. This is something I do not hear a lot of other people even being bold enough to even say. But ultimately, Kamala is a person that is an empty vessel politician that the media was really hoping that she would step up and really show that she could shine as a politician. But all she is a slightly better looking version of all the other liberal politicians they had to choose from. You know, of course, Joe Biden, he pigeonholed himself on this deal. He stuck himself in a corner by saying, I'm going to pick a woman. And then the rest of the party kind of spun around and said, no, it's got to be a woman of color. So Kamala Harris was the best looking of all the colored ladies they had that would have been qualified. And I guess she had a little more fame. I mean, she did run for president herself, so I guess that kind of factors in. But ultimately, they picked her because of the way that she looks, not because of how good of a politician she is. Very cynical way to choose your vice presidential running mate. But this kind of makes sense. You know, her whole entire political career is literally built on her being slightly better looking than all the other alternatives. From the time she was getting into politics, 28, 29, she connected with that guy Brown, the guy she had the affair with, right? And then he gave her entry into politics. How'd she do that? She was the gal he was sleeping with. She in essence was doing what a woman does when they want access to power through a powerful man. She didn't somehow rise to the level of power and influence she has in California politics now out of some sort of special she's got the political juice. No, she found a guy that was easy to dupe and she was prettier than his other options. She had an affair with him. He opened doors for her politically and it started her on her track. And honestly, the way that she rose up in politics in the California system is because she had a nice smile and a giggle. I think these are the two components that allowed her to rise up. I mean, liberals, they don't actually stand for that much anyways, right? So why wouldn't it be easy for someone that's kind of pretty, that's got a better smile than the other gal next to her? I mean, honestly, you don't have to be a supermodel to make it in politics. Just be just above average looking and you'll look like a supermodel in politics. And that's all it took in California. Be somewhat good looking throughout your life. Be a shallow, vapid liberal. Smile a lot, giggle a lot, and you will move up into prominence within the political scene. Sadly, because she was never really challenged on her character, she was playing politics on easy mode, she was able to retain having terrible character and was never truly challenged on being a good person. So I think that for her going into this debate, her prep going into the debate, she thought that all she had to do was recite the mainstream news narrative, talking points, and then just at the right time, say, I'm talking now. Excuse me, I'm talking now. That all together with her charming giggle and her smile would be enough to just beat Pence easily. But clearly, She is living in a form of self-delusion. She's entered into a phase of politics where it's going to take more than a smile and a giggle to move up this ladder. So there you have it, the anatomy of a liberal NPC politician. Literally vapid, banal, doesn't have anything to say, doesn't actually stand for anything, only stands against what Republicans are doing, and it's running out of battery power. It's running out of energy. Identity politics, the last time I think that we're going to see identity politics really work is when Obama ran for president. The 2 times he did and won. I think identity politics has seen its best days, and the Democratic Party is going to have to make a shift, and they're going to have to actually tackle real policies after 2021. And this is why I believe we are seeing that widening enthusiasm gap between the two parties. Because one party is more substantive and the other party is still playing good body nonsense politics in the pre-2016 world of politics. See, it used to be back before 2016, both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, were playing good body politics, good body nonsense politics. They were both just spewing what they thought people wanted to hear. They were both just analyzing polls and then determining what their position was going to be based on how people polled within their party. And then sometimes it swayed Republican, sometimes it swayed Democrat, but none of them were taking huge risks. Donald Trump steps into the batter's box and he swings for the fence. He comes up with a whole new set of criteria to look at for how a candidate becomes a candidate and then how that candidate becomes president. He was looking at all different criteria. He effectively moneyballed the way that a candidate becomes president for the rest of time. The Democrats have still not caught up. They are running their presidential candidates today in 2020 as if they are running a presidential candidate back like when Clinton was running. You know what I'm saying? They are missing the point. Identity politics isn't going to work anymore. Just being a person that's a hack, that is waiting for the media to tell them what to think and just reciting a bunch of junk that the media says, not going to be enough. And Pence exposed that in the vice presidential debate, and Trump exposed that in the presidential debate. And that is the combination of those things is why we're seeing what was an enthusiasm gap turn into an enthusiasm Grand Canyon. All right, guys, hope you've enjoyed this show today. This has been another episode of Americana X Newswatch. I'm Greg D, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And we will see you here next time. What's the next time we're meeting here? Friday.